motion that you want to speak. I want you to be as a part as much as you want to be a part. All right. So anyway, let's look at Ruth chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, "And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth, of a family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz." Anybody remember what we said Naomi's name means? Y'all remember that?
Beautiful front.
That was Ruth. It was pleasant. Yeah, it was pleasant.
But she became better.
Yeah, and then she changed her name when she came back. She said her name was what? What did she say that her name was? Mara. What does Mara mean?
Bitterness.
Bitterness, right. It means bitterness because, why did she say that? Why did she say her?
Lost everything and thinks the Lord forsake her.
Right, she lost everything and she thought God was against her. So she's like, don't call me pleasantness anymore, call me bitterness. That's how I feel. And she really, I think she even was angry with God about how her life had transpired. But I don't think that she completely blamed God, but she kind of did at the same time, where he could have taken better care of him, but for some reason he didn't. Not that she didn't quit believing in him, but she was bitter. She was bitter about life. And you can get that way. It's easy to get that way. You have a couple things happen in your life. It's easy to say it's just not worth it. We tried serving God and it didn't work out. Well, that's probably the key right there, is that there's a lot of people that try to serve God and they never really establish that relationship with Him. If you have that relationship, even though you're going through bad things, it's like you can see His hand drawing you closer to Him even when you're going through bad stuff. But if you don't have that relationship, if you're just trying Him, well, you're going to have those bad things happen in your life, and you're going to continually go a different direction. Yes, you may continue to have a belief in God, but to have that relationship that He wants you to have, you don't have that. And I've seen that in a lot of people. And I tell you, those are the hardest people to witness to. Those people that have tried God, because they think that's what the Bible's about. They think it's about trying God, trying church, and they never really establish that relationship. If you've ever been into a relationship with somebody, especially a marriage, several people here are married or maybe considering that. If you just try marriage, it's going to fail. If you try to have a relationship with someone else, even best friends, if you're just like, I'm just going to try to be friends with them, it's going to fail. You're going to get mad at them. You're going to quit because things get rough. And, one of the things that, guys that go through wars together, you see those vets on the other side of like World War II or Vietnam, and they maintain those guys are closer than brothers. And you look at them, you're like, how did they get to that? Well, it's because they were dodging bullets together. They went through the battle together. Right, they were there for each other during the hardest times, and if you can make it through that, the relationship at the other end is stronger. It's hardier. It can handle a lot of stuff a lot more, because you're like, well, what we're going through now is nothing like what happened back then. And you're just, that's the way God is too. He wants you to have that type of relationship with Him, that whenever you're going through hard stuff, you don't just quit. You dig in. You're just like, we're going to get through this. We're going to make it work. And Naomi did not quite understand that, but she did something right. She went back to where she needed to be. Even though she wasn't in the right frame of mind, she felt like she had lost everything, her attitude towards God wasn't correct, she went back to where she needed to be. She went back to the house of bread, the place where she could be fed by God. Now that's going to become very, very important as we transpire through this story, because it's not very long into being back where she needed to be that the pleasant friend, the blessed friend, the beautiful friend who came along with her, Ruth, is going to go out. She wants to help her mother-in-law survive, so she's going to go work in the field. And you got to think this Ruth is probably, I don't know, right around, 25. I think she's probably around like 25, maybe getting close to 30 years old or so. She's not past being able to marry, but she's been old enough to have a husband in the past that passed away. So I think she's probably around 25 years old, maybe a little bit older. And she meets this guy, and his name is Boaz. Anybody know what Boaz's name means? You got Blue Letter Bible, you can look it up. I'll give you a second to look at it. She meets Boaz, and this scripture says that he is a near kinsman. Now that becomes very important understanding, because the story of Ruth is the story of a kinsman redeemer. And we're going to go through what all that means, and that's what the story of Ruth really does. And this story, as we go through it, it also portrays the relationship that you should try to have with your Savior, with your God, with your Creator. So she meets Boaz, and or at least she meets his property, his field, and his servants, and she begins to harvest in her fields. Anybody find it yet? Fleetness. So Boaz's name means fleetness. Anybody know what fleetness means?
Mine says it means in him is strength.
It means what?
In him is strength.
In him is strength. Does that help you understand what Boaz means? What do you call a group of warships? A fleet. Does that help you understand fleetness? So in him is the strength of a fleet. Yeah, you're not going to go against a fleet and have good things happen again to you, right? Yeah, like being it. Well, a fleet actually does travel pretty quick too sometimes, but I think it means like the abundance of strength, not just strength in like a singleness, but a fleet strength in many different areas. So here's Boaz. He's got this field, and in verse 2, everybody look at verse 2 with me. It says, "And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, Let me go now into the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find." Let me read that again. "And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, Let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, Go, my daughter. And she went and came and gleaned in a field after the reapers, and her hap was to light on a part of the field belonging unto Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech." So she says, I'm going to go look for a place that will accept me. Now, yes, sir.
I was going to say, one interesting piece of
Speak loud so it show up here.
Apparently, one of the left of the two brazen pillars at Solomon's temple was named Boaz.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep, that is true.
I guess they were paying honor to him.
Well, they're paying honor to him because he's the great granddad of David.
Yeah, if he hadn't
So-
redeemed Ruth, then none of them would have existed.
Right. Yeah, what's about to happen is going to change the course of a nation. Okay? That's what's about to happen in this story. And you got to think, what is one person? One person can change the trajectory of an entire nation. They can. especially if God's hand is in that, and that person will submit themselves to God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. You know, and that's a concept we struggle with. Like, what can one person really do? What if George Washington hadn't been born? What about Thomas Jefferson? So if those guys hadn't been around, you know, during certain times, God puts people there for such a time as this. And you know, you think, well, man, that's over the whole nation. I'm not, you know, and there's nothing to me. You know, it may be that you being willing to serve God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength changes the trajectory of just one other person. Would that be worth it? To that person, it is. You know, if it means heaven or hell for that one person, you mean the world to them. You know, and some of the things that are going on, you may not even know in this life. You may not find out until the next life. What effect that your relationship with God had on others. And you know, and that's what we strive for. Are we trying to change nations? We're not trying to change the nation. We're just trying to serve God with all our power. And in doing so, that's what changes nations. That's what changes lives. And in a sense, that is the foundation of the gospel. Where God provides a miracle. He sends somebody into the lives of others that changes their eternal destiny. That's what Jesus did for so many people. And now we have Ruth. And God wants to use her. And it says that it just happened to be that she went to this field of somebody that is a near kinsman, that's like, he's like a first cousin to Elimelech. She just happened to go to that field.
Divine providence.
Right, and the people of that field, they accepted Ruth. Now Ruth is different, okay? She doesn't look like the rest of the people around. She looks different. And her background is sketchy at best. We know what goes on over in Moab. We know what those people do. They're different. They're different. Yet she came upon a group of people that accepted her. And when she told them her story, you know, I'm just here, I just want to help my mother-in-law, Naomi. She's lost everything. And I just want to get enough food to make sure that she can survive. She's welcomed in by the servants of this field, and she begins to glean. Now, what does gleaning mean? Anybody know what gleaning means?
Pull out the good stuff. Pull out the good stuff.
It's not pulling out the good stuff.
Or pull out the bad stuff.
It's the leftovers.
The leftovers?
Yep, gleaning is the leftovers. In Jewish law, whenever they would do the fields, they would, you know, all the good stuff seems to be in the middle. Have y'all noticed that? You drive by a cornfield, what does it look like? All the stuff on the edge, does it look as good as what's in the middle or not? No, it looks shorter, right? It looks a little bit more sappier. I don't know why it's like that. It's always like that. I've got a row of okra. Same thing. It's one row of okra. The ends, little tiny short things, all that stuff in the middle is tall, and that's what I get most of the fruit off of. In the Jewish custom, they would leave the corners and the edges of the fields, and those are for those guys who are coming down the road and they're a little bit hungry and they're allowed to pull off an ear or get whatever they need to be able to make a meal. That was a Jewish custom. You leave that stuff on the edge for travelers and people who just really don't have very much to pour
I was
from.
thinking about the way we use the word glean. I guess it doesn't mean like the pull out. That's what I was thinking. As we talk about gleaning from the scripture, you know, pulling out stuff from the scripture.
Yeah, well, we use it that term, but really when we use that word, you know, we're just saying we're just getting stuff on the edges. We're not really getting, you know, the meat of it. You know, we'll use a different phrase if we're like, you know, this is something I can chew on. I'm getting the meat of the word, rather than I'm just kind of gleaning. I'm just going around the edge of it. So that's what gleaning means. Now Boaz, he comes on the scene. He's a different type of guy. He's a businessman. businessman, but he wants to know what's going on and he wants to take care of his people. So he shows up and he's greeting all of his folks, and he looks over and he sees Ruth. Let's look at these verses together. I think let's look in verse 4. And it says, "And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said unto the reapers, The Lord be with you. And they answered him, The Lord bless thee. Then said Boaz unto his servant that was over the reapers, Whose damsel is this? And the servant that was over the reapers answered and said, It is the Moabitess damsel that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came and hath continued even from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house. Then said Boaz unto Ruth, Hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens. Let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch thee when thou art athirst? Go into the vessels and drink of that which the young men have drawn." So Ruth, she's happened to come to this field. The servant has accepted her, and now Boaz says, you are welcome here. So she's hearing this from the boss. So, what, did you have something for the show?
No.
Okay. So he learns Ruth's story. He's already impressed with her, okay? Because Ruth could have stayed back with her family, but instead she decided to come back with Naomi. Naomi has nothing to give Ruth. Like, he realizes she's not doing this because Naomi has something that she can gain. Ruth gains nothing, really, by coming back with Naomi, except to try to sustain her. You see, Ruth has this very giving heart. You see that in her? That she's a giver without any expectation. She's not trying to manipulate Naomi. She's like, I'm here to be a blessing. That is why I'm here. And that's the heart that God is looking for. You got to wonder, how could David be a man after God's own heart? You got a grandmother who's Ruth, she's just really got this in her like her core. She is a giver, and she wants to be a blessing to other people. And she's not afraid. She's not afraid of change. She's not afraid to do anything different. She's not even afraid that they're not even going to accept her. She's like, I'll just do my best. And God put her, it just happened that she found this field, and Boaz is impressed with her. And he says, stay here. And in fact, I want you to just follow the reapers. The ones that are picking in the middle, you just follow them, and you take from the best. You don't have to glean from the edges. You just follow them and you harvest. Instead of gleaning, you just kind of reap what you need in my field, and you take care of your mother-in-law. That's really what Boaz is telling her. Any questions so far?
He would have known when he found out that she was Naomi's daughter-in-law. He would have known that they were related. She doesn't, right?
Right. Yeah, she doesn't know yet. She just thinks, I'm just looking for a place where I can get a meal. That's what Ruth thinks.
She's just trying to take care of me.
Yeah. But God always has something more in mind. You think, I'm just trying to get through to the next day. God says, I'm trying to get you into the future. I'm trying to make your future so much better. And we're like, I'm just trying to struggle for today. And that's what you should do. You don't need to think about, well, how do I prepare for my future? You put that in God's hands, and you make sure that today you serve Him to the best of your ability. And let God take care of the rest. And He will. And He will. You know what that's called?
Faith.
It's called faith. It's trusting in that thing that you just cannot see. I had a VBS teacher one time. He said, this is a good phrasing of faith, if you can remember it, kind of an acronym: forsaking all, I trust Him. And that's how he kind of defined faith, is that, no matter what's going on, I just got to trust Him, no matter what. And sometimes that's really, really difficult. That's not the way that we're designed. You know, that's why God's people are peculiar people, because they're stepping outside of the bounds of normal human life, where we really do. We put our hands into the Creator, and no matter what happens to this body, we're okay with what God is going to do with us. And we hope that along the way we can be a blessing to those that we meet. And that's called being a witness, where we just show God's love along the way. The go ye, that's what that phrase means in Matthew chapter 28 right there. It says, go ye into all the world. It really means as you are going, while you're going down this life's road, that you're just trying to be a witness along the way. So Boaz, there in verse 9, he charges the young men. He says, they're not going to be rude to you. They're not going to shame you. They're not going to tell you whatever. They're going to treat you just like you're one of mine. Like you're one of my daughters, one of my servants that's helping me out. You're one of mine. I'm going to take care of you. So, any questions so far? So what do you see in Ruth? Like if you're going to look at attributes, what do you see so far in her relationship to Naomi? You see someone who's dedicated? You think she's dedicated? What does that mean? What does it mean that she's dedicated?
She's committed to Naomi to take care of him. She knew that she didn't have anybody else left. It would have been easy for her to bail out and stay in Moab where her family was and go back to her parents' house. She would have been a lot more comfortable, and she would have been, she had every right to do that at that point, but she chose to. She had found faith in God and wanted to stay with God's people, and as such, with Naomi, and to honor that bond that was created in their marriage. So she decided to do that.
Yes, she is. She's very. She is very dedicated.
She mentions God at the beginning when they're talking about going back there. She's like, when Naomi tells her she can go home, she said something about going.
Your God will be my God.
Yeah, your God. Will be my
Right,
God. Yeah,
right.
That's what it was.
Yes, ma'am.
I describe her as selfless.
She is selfless, and a dedicated person is usually pretty selfless. I guess depending on what your dedication is too.
She seems humble.
Yeah. And all these attributes are going towards helping really someone else. It's not about herself. It's really about others. And God's looking at that type of mentality for His servants. And Ruth, she's fitting the bill. Listen to this proverb from chapter 16 and verse 3. Proverbs 16 and verse 3. It says, "Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established." That's kind of the nature of a dedicated person, especially if you're dedicated to serving God, if you're dedicated to doing His work. What would that phrase mean in that proverb? What do you think, Eli? Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established. I know I put you on the spot. Somebody help him. What do you got, Isaac?
With what?
When it says, "Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established."
No.
What's the question?
If you're working for the Lord, then your thoughts will automatically go.
Right. Exactly. What is it that you're doing? If if whatever it is that you're doing is committed to the Lord, it says He establishes your thoughts. You got to wonder, how could somebody like Ruth be dedicated to Naomi? Well, it stems all the way back from what y'all said, that I want to know your God. I want to know the Creator. And she has positioned herself to be an instrument to do His work. And it said, and the proverb says that God actually starts working on your thoughts. He directs your thoughts. You know, sometimes you start wondering, like, why certain people think some ways. You know, if you've been a Christian a while and you've been trying to serve God, for a while, your mind starts to change, doesn't it? Like, the way it's wiring is different. Especially if you've had a very sinful past, and 20 years later, after you've been serving God for 20 years, and you look back. In fact, it might not even be that long. It might be like 2 or 3 years, and you look back, you're like, I don't even know that former self. I don't know why that person thought like they did, because God has reprogrammed you, because you've committed your works unto the Lord, and He has actually dedicated you. You've dedicated yourself, and He has dedicated you to doing His work. And He has reprogrammed you. You know, if you've ever had a computer, some computers are designed for certain things, right? Like you've got gaming consoles. You know, it's going to be tough to do a Word program on a gaming console, right? Because that's not what it's designed for. So, when I was in the Air Force, we had computers. They were designed to test the missiles. It was useless for anything else. Its sole purpose in life, it was dedicated to that. And that's what we see coming out in Ruth, is that she has dedicated herself to Naomi, to God, and God is working on those thoughts and driving her into a different realm. And even the people around her, He's working on their thoughts too. Let's look to see what else is going on. In Psalms chapter 1 and verse 2, it says, "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in His law doth he meditate day and night." If you're wondering, Brother Mitch, how can somebody start thinking like that? How could somebody be like Ruth and think the way that she did and do the things that she did and willing to forsake all and follow into a direction that she didn't know? Well, Psalms chapter 1 right there kind of explains some things. That when you don't walk in the counsel of the ungodly, that's an important thing. And I noticed it a lot. I'm not going to pick on the teenagers, but I am for a second, because I know what's going on.
You have freedom
Freedom to chastise them, because I've been there. When you're doing things in your life and you want to, but your parents are disagreeing with you, you can always find some friend who's gonna. It's like, you can do that. You don't have to listen to them. They're old fogies, and you can always find somebody who's going to agree with you.
They'll tell you what you want to hear.
They'll tell you exactly what you want to hear. Even as you age, and maybe some things don't go right. You're disagreeing. Let's say you're married. You're disagreeing, having some disagreements with your spouse. You can find somebody who's going to side with you, and that usually ends up destroying a marriage. And you know why? Because it tends to be the counsel of the ungodly. And God says, go with my counsel. Go with my counsel. Don't just look for somebody who agrees with you, but really take that counsel and say, I'm going to dedicate my work to God. I'm not going to stand in the way of sinners. That's in the road. I'm not going to walk down that road of sinners.
Committing your work to God, Colossians 3:23.
What does it say?
It says, "And whatsoever you do it heartily as to the Lord, and not unto men, knowing that of the Lord you shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ."
Right. Yeah, commit. Just put all in to God, and He's gonna work out the minor details.
Whatever you do. So if you're at
Yeah,
work,
whatever.
no matter what it is, dedicated to God. front of mine, and then, that's gonna, everything else will fall.
Right. That will keep you out of a lot of trouble. And you know,
That verse probably 4 or 5 times a week, just with their score.
All right.
Like, you're not doing it for me, whatever you do, you're supposed to be doing it for God, so do your best, you know? They don't always have context.
don't sit in the seat of the scornful, but your delight, like your delight. What does that mean? Your delight.
The things you like,
Hmm?
like the things you like to do.
Yeah, the things you like to do. Anybody delight in ice cream?
We had ice cream today, actually.
Yeah. Anybody delight? I'm gonna pick on the kids. Anybody delight in video games?
It's not an addiction.
It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Stop anytime you want.
I'm just doing that. You know, those things are fun, but you just have to make sure that you do it with temperance and with discretion and your true delight.
If you were gonna call all of us out, you should have said technology in general.
I didn't want to step on too many toes at once, because I just want you to get the idea that there are things that you delight in. What if you delighted in the Lord as much as you did those things?
If we don't, then those things are idols.
Yeah, those things they can become idols. Hey, delight in the Lord like you delight in those things, and you're gonna see some really unique things happen in your life. So we have Ruth here. She's dedicating her life to taking care of her mother-in-law. Look in verse. I'm gonna kind of wrap this up in just a second. But look with me in verses 10 through 11. It says, Ruth, she fell on her face and bowed herself to the ground and said unto him, Why have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger? I just want it. I just had a thought. It's not in my notes, but this morning we were reading at the tail end of Judges. Okay, this is during that time period. Okay, this is during that time period, the tail end of Judges. Do what?
Strangers weren't treated very well.
Strangers weren't treated very well. How did they treat their women
Even worse.
in Gibeah? Yeah, they're. Oh, you wanna rape the guys? Well, we'll give you the girls, and you can just have your way with them.
To the point of killing them.
Right. Boaz was not like that. And you got to think, well, what made Boaz different? Well, he was a worshiper of the Creator.
Righteous.
He was righteous, and he wanted to do what was right. And he was valuing women, servants, in a time when that was not popular. So that puts there. Man, we could go in a lot of different ways, but I just want you to see, he's different. He sees the world different than the rest of the people around him. Even his fellow Israelites. He doesn't agree with them. He's different, and his value system is different. So we see him, and that's why she falls on her face, because she's like, I'm used to the Gibeon mindset when they're like, man, women are property over there. But here, why do you value me? Why have I found grace? Why do you think I'm important? Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if this is actual evidence or if it was part of a story I read that was with Ruth and Boaz, but it says something about Boaz having maybe a half mother, like he was part Jewish, like his mother might have been from somewhere else. I don't know if that's biblical. That's just something I thought I might have read.
Well, if you start tracing the lineage, you know who is in the lineage of Boaz that's prior to this? Rahab.
Rahab made me.
Maybe.
She did. She was actually Boaz's probably great-grandmother, maybe great-great-grandmother. So maybe he has a heart for somebody that has a heart like his great-great-grandmother. So that's where we're at in this story. So yeah, you know that's not just a made up piece. I mean that's in the genealogy that you can find in Matthew and in Luke.
There's your answer to that.
So we have Ruth and we have Boaz here. She's dedicated herself. Look in verse 11. It says, "And Boaz answered and said unto her, It hath fully been showed me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother." Hey, does that sound familiar? You have left father and mother. Jesus said, "No man who has left father and mother shall not be rewarded," didn't he? So God looks at a heart like that, that's willing to leave everything to serve him. "And the land of thy nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knowest not hithertofore." So Boaz says, I recognize your situation, I recognize your heart, and I admire that. I admire that. So look at Ruth with me real quick. Why? Because of her dedication, Boaz is saying, I'm gonna be God's hand in your life. I'm gonna take care of you. I'm gonna help take care of you. Reap in the middle of my field. You don't have to be a gleaner here. You just get right there, right behind my gleaners, and you get the best that I have and take care of Naomi. She willingly joined. That's what we see from Ruth. She says, I'm going to willingly join God's side. I'm going to go after God's people. I'm going to go after God's heart. She willingly joined herself to Naomi, didn't she? No one twisted her arm. Naomi said, go home, Ruth. I have nothing to give you. I have nothing to offer. When I go back, I'm going to less than I even have here. Go home. Let your family take care of you. And Ruth says, no. I'm going to be joined to you. Your people will be my people. Your God, my God. Your land, my land. I'm willingly joining you. She left her parents, she left her homeland, and she became a stranger in a foreign land. And she didn't know what that was going to mean. Most of the time, strangers were not really accepted. But she said, I'm willing to take that chance for the sake of Naomi. Luke 14:26 says, if any man come unto me and hate not his father and his mother and wife and children and brother and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. You know what we see in the actions of Ruth? A disciple. Somebody who really wants to be a disciple. I mean, it doesn't mean that you hate them and you want them out of your life, but it means that you just love God so much more than any of those other things in your life. That he really is the most important. So that's what we see in the life of Ruth. Anybody got any comments? Any more things that they'd like to say on that? Any more questions? So what do y'all think about Ruth so far? Unique person? How many times have you met a person like Ruth?
My mother.
They're tough to find, aren't they? And you know, they don't. And if you think, well, I want to, you know, there's no way I can be like her. You know, sometimes you have to grow into being a Ruth. But it comes when, you know, with that Proverbs chapter 1 verse, that you don't go in the counsel of all those wicked things, but you commit your way to God. Your delight is really in his law, in his word. And that's what drives you. That's what motivates you in your life. Even if you're not good at it, you want it to be. And when you fail, you ask for forgiveness and you get back up and you try again. Do you realize that? You just get back up and you try again. You pray for forgiveness, and if you really are sorry about it, God knows your heart, and he wants to forgive you. He doesn't want you to stay in that type of mindset. He wants you to get up and go again. The scripture says, though a righteous man falls 7 times, get back up again and go again. That doesn't mean that you only get 7 chances. That just means every time you fall, brush yourself off, pray for forgiveness, and get going again.
Eventually. What if at first you don't succeed?
Yeah, it becomes important. But that's that person that's delight really is in the law of the Lord. Even if you don't fully got it together, hey, you will get there. You will get there eventually. Don't give up. Don't give in. Commit your heart. Commit yourself to following God. Any final thoughts? If not, I'm going to close this in prayer. Would y'all pray with me? Dear Lord, I just want to ask that you just continue to help us to grow in grace and in faith. Help us to learn from the story of Naomi and Ruth and Boaz and be able to just take these principles that we're getting from this story and to apply them to our lives. Knowing, Lord, that you care so much about us and you want the good things for our life and you want us to grow in grace and in faith. Lord, help us to have courage. Help us to be willing to serve you with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, despite what's going on in this world. We know that you have the power, you have the ability, and we just ask, Lord, that you would use us to be your instruments of righteousness in this wicked world. Guide us, Lord, in these things. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.